Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Green Heart Wellbeing Podcast. Normally I have these recorded like towards the beginning of the week and then post on the Sunday, but today is Saturday, but I'm really proud of myself that I managed to make time to get it recorded because, like I was saying before, consistency is definitely one of my things. I'm also recording it in a different place in my house because my AC is broken in where my office is. So if you're watching, this is where we are. We're sitting in the jungle corner of my house. But I'm sure if you live in the UAE, you can imagine what, when the AC is broken August, it's not great. Anyway, so this episode is going to be all about what education looks like for me now. So on Instagram the other day, I posted about how I was feeling a bit tired. I wasn't feeling well, and I was looking back at a couple of weeks and I just had loads of different meetings and events and things that, I'm trying to do within Green Heart, like business development things, and it's a lot to kind of keep track of. And then I met for coffee with a friend, and we were just talking about education, because we both left education, traditional education school system just now. We were both teachers, and we were just having a wee chat about like what it looks like and what we joined education for initially, and what we thought it would be like, what it turned out to be like, things like that. And it was really interesting, and it got me to thinking, well, this might actually be a kind of nice episode. Is like what education actually looks like for me now as like the founder of Green Heart, which is an education and well-being company, or part of it is a big part of it, but things have changed in how I approach education. And also within social media and things like that, and obviously it goes along, like the algorithms show you the things that you're interested in, but I've also had a few meetings about homeschooling and what homeschooling or unschooling looks like in Dubai, which has been really interesting to speak to people in that community. And I've also, there's some more alternative type education organizations or schools popping up across the UAE. So yeah, I've been having loads of videos pop up in social media about the type of things, and there's a lot of us saying the type of things that really aligns with what I believe. So I'm going to get into some of that when, through the episode. But I just wanted to share a little bit about what education looks like for me now. And if you're working within education, or you're a parent, or you're thinking about your child's education, or you're just interested in well-being in education, hopefully there'll be something here that kind of helps you, think more about that, reflect on it, or anyway, I'd love to hear anything that you share as well. Like I mentioned last week, I have that little button where it's like send us a message. So I had some messages again through like WhatsApp and Instagram and TikTok, which is nice. Again, all my friends, thanks for that. But yeah, if you're listening, do get in touch, tell me your thoughts, tell me what, be part of the conversation about what you think needs to stay the same, what needs to change. Okay, so, and I'm looking here at my notes again on my iPad, so I just want to check that I'm starting with the right. Yeah, so when I did my training in Scotland, in Glasgow Uni, a really long time ago, to be honest, I don't feel like they really prepared us for like what the actual classroom was going to be like, and I'm sure lots of people say that in their teacher training. So it's not really until you get out and you're on a placement you start to learn more about different approaches, what lessons shouldn't look like, things like that. But what they don't, or I don't feel at the time, what I was prepared for was the whole human experience as a educator, but also just being with the children. It's like there's a lot of stuff that maybe they do now, I don't know, you can fill me in if you're just doing your training, is like what they don't teach you about working with the little human beings that have got this whole universe inside them and have so many different circumstances, where they've grown up, what their family context looks like, if they've been to nursery, if they haven't, it's just, there's so much. So when I left Scotland and came to the UAE, again, I came here and was like, oh, I'm going to be working in a private school, because that was essentially what all the schools are here. And that meant something different to me, what private schools look like in Glasgow in Scotland, where I'm from, compared to what they look like here. So when I got here, they say it's the British education system. It's actually more so the English curriculum that's followed. I don't know any schools that really follow exclusively like the Scottish or Welsh curriculum, or Northern Irish for that matter. So what I learned a lot more about when I got here was data, and subjects were separate when I first got here, which was 15 years ago, and in year 1 we were teaching history and like geography, but as separate subjects, and I was like, this is not anything that I've ever done before. You know, in Scotland it was all topic based at that point. The curriculum for excellence had just been introduced, which is a completely different curriculum that we learned about in uni, which was the 5 to 14 guidelines. So, you know, 4 years of uni, just again, you come out and it's totally different. So over the years, what I learned a lot about was, well, obviously the core of education is academics, you know. So everything then became about progress, attainment, results, exam results for the older kids. We still see that in what is it called? I can't even remember what it's called. GCSEs. In Scotland it's called Highers. And then here A-level exams and things like that. So there was a lot of measurement, and that was all kind of new to me. I also alongside the way that initially we had to do our planning sessions. I hadn't written a full lesson plan since second year in uni, because we just didn't do that in Scotland. Like, all of a sudden I had to write word for word what was going to be happening in every single lesson, and I was like, how even then, being a really young new novice teacher, I was like, how is this efficient in terms of time? Like, I just couldn't really understand it. Anyway, so it was a whole education in itself for me, but there was always this thing in me, it's like, yeah, but it's about the child, you know. It's not just about opening the head and putting stuff in it. And of course, as things go on, you understand like the process of learning, and you know, for example, yes, phonics and sounds and all that kind of stuff, but I was always in the back of my mind somewhere, and probably wouldn't have been able to articulate it until maybe the last like 10 years or so. It would be like, yeah, but isn't it more about how the child experiences learning and what piques their curiosity, and how can we provide for that effectively? So yeah, I think the transition for me then to where I'm definitely at now is like, I'm way beyond the focus on academics. Now, there are so many companies and loads of fellow teachers in the UAE and obviously beyond who've started their own companies and businesses, and it is all based around academics. And I'm so glad that they're there, because it makes space for me and similar companies to mine who aren't interested in improving the academics of children. What Green Heart especially, and other companies similar, I guess, it's like, it's the whole child development. And while I know that that is considered in mainstream education, and of course it's considered in academics in some ways, to me, I prefer to flip it round, and it's not what that child, if they reach the data that I need to show that they've made this much progress in my class or anything like that. It's, to me, what would initially be called soft skills. To me, they're not soft, but like creativity, resilience, emotional literacy, confidence, self-regulation, understanding the self, hearing your own inner voice, empathy, recognizing the emotion in others, being able to identify with other people and feel what they're feeling. And, you know, again, this is probably the core of what Green Heart Wellbeing is and what the clubs are. I know I've said it millions of times in other episodes, but like positive psychology and the masters really brought together scientific like research and evidence-based interventions, and that stuff that I had been feeling and then had been able to articulate. It brought it together and almost like legitimized you know, the thing that I cared about most. So I suppose what I'm kind of mentioning here, education for me, I would say, I defy you to find me a teacher or someone who's went into education for the money, for the holidays. And that's like a controversial one. It's like, oh yeah, but you get all these holidays, and that's another episode. But people don't go into education for those things. They go in, or a steady job even, because actually sometimes it can be quite unsteady, especially if you're an expat in a different country. The systems maybe aren't the same as your home country. For example, unions and things don't exist here. It's like a different way of doing things. So here, your visa in the UAE, your visa and salary and things, your livelihood is really connected to your job in that way, if you work within like a private company. So I think education for me has changed because I'm not working within that system, but yeah, I just think those soft skills are the core. I can't remember why I started talking about that, but anyway, I wanted to mention it's like beyond academics. I'm glad that there's people that still are focusing on those things within education, but also there's room for other stuff, and this is where for me well-being comes in. Sometimes I feel like schools are like, no, we can do it all. We've got someone in here who does innovation, we've got someone here who is in charge of well-being, and da-da-da-da-da. But I want to make another episode in future about the difference between say like tick box well-being or showboating well-being and actual systemic change that impacts effectively psychological and subjective well-being of the community. So to me, that is a huge part of it. That is education in itself. And I wouldn't say that we're there yet, where all education systems and all organisations are really, really doing that from the inside out. Lots of schools still really think about, how can we measure this? And years ago, before I even really kind of knew about measurement systems in terms of well-being, which I don't always think is the right thing, but I used to just speak to the child, speak to the children, ask them what being well means for them, ask them how they look after their well-being, and ask them what helps them to manage their well-being in the school environment, you know. And I was quite confident about that because as the things I'd been teaching with the kids, be like, speak to them about it. So I guess when I think about what education looks like for me now, there are of course some things that I've taken from teaching for 15 years in the systems, because I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing now if I hadn't had the experience of working with families, working with children, working with teams, systems, structures, things like that. So there is obviously positive things that I've brought with me, but now I guess what they say, that old thing is true about time, teaches you, and then age is a thing where you can start being more discerning about what you want to, or how you want to show up within what you're doing. So some of the things that I did bring, obviously coaching, there's overlaps between coaching and teaching. Good teaching, best practice in teaching, because obviously the idea there is we're just facilitating learning for children. We're not giving them the answer or telling them what to do or da-da-da. Whereas coaching, also true coaching, isn't somebody sitting telling you, well, I think you should try this, or what about if you do this, or what about if you do that, or this, da-da-da. It's about empowering the person. Actually, a coach should really speak much less during the session than you. Their job is just to give specific questions at really important times and mirror some things back to you that you've been saying. So I guess what I have taken with me is understanding humans more, understanding myself more, having those 15 years to work within education and learn about the best way to support a child's growth from being really young, and learning how to be human, the things that matter with them, how they receive what you're trying to learn, what you're trying to share with them and teach. And I think one of those things that over time that I've taken with me and I've learned is like relationships are really at the core of effective learning and teaching. If the kids don't like you, they're not going to learn from you. The parents and team that work with a child are your colleagues, and having positive relationships and nurturing relationships are what's best for the child. So I think that's something that was never taught to me in uni. It's like something that you learn over time and experience. So yeah, there's definitely some things I've taken structurally from education that have been good for my business. You know, I had the opportunities to really learn about tech, about my creativity in some senses, about probably the, dare I say it, like the stifling of creativity. I found that sometimes I never had enough time to be really creative and how I expected it to be with the children. Time just doesn't permit in certain contexts because you've got a lot of admin and all that kind of stuff to do. But I definitely learned about structure, using technology to help yourself work smarter, not harder, communication, adaptability. I've said this in other episodes that I'm telling you, so many teachers that speak to me like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, you can do so many things. Just because you've not studied a course or been to uni again or this or that doesn't mean that you haven't got all these adaptable skills that can be used in a completely other industry or for your own thing. So there was definitely a lot of that I've carried over and taken from teaching. But then when I think about that as well, how much of that is connected to my own personal human experience of growing, learning, and, you know, getting older and feeling and hearing what really matters to me and what lights me up and what makes me passionate, you know. So there's a kind of a dual aspect to that one, you know, but again, you need to sit and really reflect on it and think a lot deeper. But there was definitely things that I brought with me from education. So you can too, whether you're, you know, thinking about a career change or thinking about just your own personal growth. There is stuff that will be invaluable that you've experienced so far that you can take with you, but you don't have to take everything. Yeah, so then of course there's a few things that I left behind. Education for me now, and I feel quite privileged to be in a space where I don't need to really hugely consider this stuff just now. I had to let go of measuring by academics. I'm so glad that I don't need to measure the kids that come into wellbeing clubs at the beginning in any way and then at the end. What I do is speak with the parents via email, like with all the groups that are coming to me, and share with them and say, this is the positive psychology theme that we've worked on this week, or this is the story we've done, here's the activity, here's what we've been learning about, whether it's like mindfulness or gratitude or character strengths, whatever it is. And there's no measurement. I'll say, ask your child to share it with you. Get them to teach you what they've learned. You know, and then I'll even have parents who are the parents of like nursery kids, because I do some little nursery groups, and they'll tell me some of the things that the kid has been saying or suggestions. And that can be something so small, like a 3-year-old saying to their mum, like, okay, just take a deep breath, mum. And although that sounds really simple, that is the foundation for building a variety of wellbeing practices, you know, that they're going to learn as they grow. So measuring by their academics and their attainment and their achievement. I have also been known to say controversial things that I've had discussions with colleagues in the past and been like, exam systems is never something I've been a fan of, you know. And I remember myself, like being younger, the importance that was placed on attaining like these letters for the results of exams and how much that meant it was going to be this in life and that in life. And here I am doing something in my own business that is completely different from you know, the university system that I went through. And although that has all been a great experience, the measurement thing, I struggle with it. Again, is just connected to how I want to take Green Heart in the future. I'm signed up to a forest leader course and I really need to finish it. I keep talking about it because for my own personal growth as a human, I want to learn how to cultivate and nurture the land, how to grow things. It'll increase and improve my patience. I want to teach children our connection with nature, and I don't have all the words and language for that yet, but again, like before I was saying, it's this thing in me that I know, and I want to be able to translate it properly in a way that really supports families. So I guess what I'm saying there is something that I left behind is the measuring of the academic thing, and I want to make more space for the human stuff, which is connected to nature and growth as a being, and not measuring that. It's just like the joy of learning, you know. Something else that I've left behind is the overworking, the absolute extremity of just being all consumed by a job. Now, you could argue that a lot of that was my own doing, you know, and it's a choice to work that way, but I would disagree, especially as an expat, because excuse me, maybe the way that you've grown up, maybe the way that you know, your family values have been instilled to you about working hard and working for a good company and things like that. Everybody's got their own journey and story with that, but I definitely feel there is an expectation of those with an education that you're doing it for the kids, and it's very altruistic, so therefore that means that the equivalency is you just overwork, and I don't subscribe to that anymore. Like, I'm not buying into it. So although I was saying on Instagram the other day that I've been really had a lot of meetings and I'm tired and I'm working, I'm well aware that that's a privilege, that tiredness is coming from something that I'm like, I have a burning passion for, so I feel really lucky for that. I don't feel like I'm signing over my soul or my very being, you know, to someone else's organisation. And everybody goes into teaching in schools for the right reasons, but you succumb to the system. And actually, I don't really feel like overworking and subscribing to the whole do it for the outcome, not the income. I'm like, nah, that doesn't fly anymore. So now, something that I'm really passionate about is people that are coming to start, and I've got 3 people maybe now that are, 3 that are starting to work with us in Green Heart, hopefully in the clubs, if they all get sign-ups next week. And the whole thing I want to ensure about that is like, there's not an overworking culture here, and it's like, make sure you rest, make sure you look after yourself. And the whole structure of running the clubs for the people that come and work with us at Green Heart is so that they've got enough free time and are still fairly paid for it, you know. And yeah, it's just, overworking is an absolute no from me now, so I left that behind with pleasure. Yeah, sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. I don't know where this came from. Maybe because I'm saying all these things are finally coming out into the world that I've been holding inside for a long time. This episode's getting a bit long now, so I'm going to rush through the last bits. Something else I've left behind is believing that well-being comes second to performance, which kind of ties into what I was saying before. I actually had a thought to myself, like, when I wasn't feeling well a few days ago, I was like, if I was working within a school, I would have dragged myself in today, because it can be so much more difficult to be sick and then sort out the things that the supply or the cover teacher needs, you know. And it's just, you're better just taking yourself in when you're not well. And some people might disagree with that, but that's how I found in my whole Scotland and Dubai, the whole 15 years, how I felt like sometimes you would take yourself in. And I think that, again, I'm watching what's happening globally, but more in the more immediate region, about how well-being shows up within education, and it's still very much on par or less than the academics. And not that I think many people would say that out loud, but I guess it's what I mean is, everybody of course wants the care and the well-being of the children, of course, and the community, but what I mean is the actual, when I talk about it, I mean the systemic changes that actually impact well-being for the better for the staff and the students and the parents. And then that means that we wouldn't have overworking or burnout for anybody, you know. So then what was the last thing I wanted to talk about? Well, something that I suppose I've kind of mentioned, it's a theme throughout all the episodes. Education for me is what it looks like now is well-being, and that is a whole curriculum for life, for being human. Before I did my yoga teacher training, I used to kind of giggle about the whole yogi philosophy, like yoga is life. But when I actually did my training in India, I understood what that meant, and it's like I get similar to what I'm saying now in the sense of yoga is life, and it means the sense. It's not like the poses and having a matcha on Instagram. It's like the essence of being human, mind, body, spirit, soul, and how that is a union together, how that unites together to navigate the human experience. And for me now, because we are scientific beings, and a lot of people then will only take things seriously when it's connected to scientific research or whatever. So that's now for me why well-being is like that, because okay, now it's legitimized in the sense of, well, here's all this stuff within the field of positive psychology that supports human flourishing. So I think now when I look at Green Heart, I feel really lucky and happy that positive psychology, coaching, the parts of teaching that I believe are the most important, education and business, all centre around that idea that well-being of the human being and soul is the education that I'm focused on. And eventually that'll have more connections with the world around us once I finish my course, but also even once we can get out in the nice weather here. I hope to do some work in Scotland in the future, because whenever I go home and put my feet on the earth there, I'm just like, I feel the thing that I'm passionate about and that I'm trying to give the children that I work with the experience of, and make sure that they really feel it and connect with that part of themselves. Okay, 26 minutes. So my takeaway this week is, if you look back to your own education and think about, even primary, if you can remember it, primary and secondary, what things would you take with you, or what things have you taken with you into your life now? What things would you have changed, maybe, or left behind? And if you work with children or you have your own children, I just want you to spend a little time thinking about, in an ideal scenario, what would be the core, what would be the heart of the education system or the education that they're experiencing now? Now that's going to be different for everybody, and it's going to be different for the different communities, like homeschooling or those that do really value academic success and achievement. I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm not saying that's wrong by any sense, but if that's what you value, then think about why. And it's such an interesting thing to reflect on. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please get in touch with me so that I can, consider maybe things that I've not thought about within this. I think this episode I've just been focusing really a lot on, what is it education to me now in terms of Green Heart Wellbeing. But that isn't to say that I don't want to hear about the other, the core of what education might mean to you as a listener. So yeah, I think life school, human experience, earth school is like how I approach my life now, but I'm well aware that I still work within really structured education systems in Dubai where I live now. But the privilege I have now is when I'm in that group with those children for a little hour, I really just revel in the joy of teaching about well-being and flourishing, which I love and I'm lucky, and that's what Green Heart's all about. Okay, almost half an hour. I've went on a wee bit this week, but thank you so much for listening, and I'm sorry that I was coughing halfway through with a wee frog in my throat. It seems to have gone now, maybe because I've shared everything I wanted to say. But have a lovely week, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.